Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Manoj Singh Rana and with me is Renuka, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Foreign aid including medicines, medical equipment and oxygen continue to arrive to support India's efforts to fight the COVID pandemic. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviews usage of gaseous oxygen to ramp up supply and availability of medical oxygen in the country. Nepal orders closure of 22 border points with India amid a sharp surge in COVID-19 cases. External Affairs Minister of India Dr. S. Jaishankar will visit London to participate in the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting. 4 astronauts of NASA's SpaceX Crew 1 mission returned safely back to the Earth. Legendary filmmaker Satyajit Ray's birth centenary being celebrated today. And in IPL cricket, Rajasthan Royals beat Sunrisers Hyderabad by 55 runs. As the number of COVID cases is on the rise, we appeal to our listeners to take all precautions and all those above 18 years of age to get vaccinated without any hesitation. The vaccination for the person of age between 18 and 44 has begun at designated facilities. Stay safe and protected by following these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. And now, the news in detail. India has received more foreign aid including medicines, medical equipment and oxygen. Another flight from the US arrived in India on Saturday night carrying over 1,000 oxygen cylinders, regulators and other medical equipment. This was its 3rd shipment in a period of 2 days, adding to the oxygen capacities in India. The External Affairs Ministry of India has thanked the US for its support. 100 oxygen concentrators and other medical supplies sent by the government of Uzbekistan also reached India last night. The Indian community in Uzbekistan has donated another 51 oxygen concentrators. The External Affairs Ministry has thanked the government of Uzbekistan and its Indian community for it. On Saturday, 120 ventilators arrived from Germany. Sources said Germany will send 1 mobile oxygen production and filling plant next week. 13 German technical personnel have come to India for training and technical assistance. Sources said a consignment of remdesivir is all set to arrive in the country. A German agency will organize a webinar on virus sequencing with the Indian technical team. In addition, procurement from private German companies is being made. 24 oxygen transport tanks were procured from German company Linde by Tata. The Oil India Corporation Limited is procuring 4 oxygen tanks from German company Albatros. 28 tons of medical equipment, including 8 hospital-level oxygen generators and other medical supplies from France, also reached India on Sunday. Deeply appreciating the support from France, MEA spokesperson Orindam Bagchi said, "It is a testament to the India-France strategic partnership and friendship." He said it will bolster India's oxygen capacities.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday chaired a meeting to review the usage of gaseous oxygen to ramp up supply and availability of oxygen in the country. Many industries like steel plants, refineries with petrochemical units, industries using rich combustion processes and power plants have oxygen plants which produce gaseous oxygen which is used in the process. This oxygen can be tapped for medical use. A report.
The strategy being used is to identify industrial units which produce gaseous oxygen to requisite purity, shortlist those which are closer to cities, and establish temporary COVID care centers with oxygenated beds near that source. A pilot for 5 such facilities had already been initiated and there is good progress on this. This is being accomplished through PSUs or private industries operating the plant and coordination of center and state governments. It is expected that around 10,000 oxygenated beds can be made available in a short period of time by making temporary hospitals near such plants. State governments are being encouraged to set up more such facilities with oxygenated beds to deal with the pandemic. With Dipendra, Suparna Saitya, IR News, Delhi.
The Prime Minister also reviewed progress on setting up of pressure swing absorption PSA plants. He was informed that around 1,500 PSA plants are in the process of being set up through contributions of PM CARES Fund, PSUs and others. He directed officials to ensure speedy completion of these plants. Principal Secretary to Prime Minister, Cabinet Secretary, Home Secretary, Secretary Road Transport and Highways and other senior officials participated in the meeting. Meanwhile, the External Affairs Ministry has clarified its response to queries regarding medical requirements of foreign high commissions and embassies in India. In a statement, spokesperson of the External Affairs Ministry, Mr. Arindam Bakshi, said on Sunday that the Chief of Protocol and heads of division are in constant touch with all the high commissions and embassies, and the MEA is responding to their medical demands, especially those related to COVID. The statement also urged everyone not to hoard essential supplies, including oxygen.
India's Railways Minister Piyush Goyal has said that the Railways is playing a crucial role in the country's collective fight against COVID-19 by transporting oxygen from oxygen plants to states across the country. He said the Indian Railways is continuously helping in the treatment of patients by transporting oxygen and ensuring its availability. Mr. Goyal said the Oxygen Express from Durgapur in West Bengal carrying 120 tons of liquid medical oxygen has reached Delhi. Meanwhile, India's Railways Ministry has deployed nearly 4,000 isolation coaches with almost 64,000 beds in order to strengthen the capabilities of the nation in the fight against COVID. The Nepal government has decided to close 22 border points with India amid a sharp surge in COVID-19 cases in India. According to the officials, it came after Nepal's COVID Crisis Management Coordination Committee recommended to the Council of Ministers to shut down 22 out of a total of 35 border points between both the countries. 13 border points between Nepal and India will remain operational. Nepal has reported 3,23,187 COVID-19 cases and 3,279 deaths so far. But cases are going up at breakneck speed. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
3 steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
Welcome back to the world news. 7 protesters were killed by security forces in Myanmar on Sunday as protests against the military government took place at several places in the country. According to the local media reports, 2 protesters were killed in the central town of Wetlet, 2 were killed in different towns of the Shan state, and 1 each in Sipo, Nong Khiao and Pangkad. According to reports, the protests were coordinated with demonstrations across the world by expatriate community of Myanmar to mark what the organizers called the Global Myanmar Spring Revolution. In recent weeks, the number of people in the protest had declined, and the security forces also appeared to exercise more restraint. The G7 members are holding the G7 Foreign and Development Ministers meeting in London, the United Kingdom, from the 3rd to the 5th of May. This is the group's first in-person meet in over 2 years. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a statement on Sunday, announced that he will be attending the meeting. As host, the United Kingdom has invited additional countries to join as guests at the meeting, including India, Australia, South Africa, the Republic of Korea and Brunei, in its capacity as chair of ASEAN. Mr. Blinken, in a statement, also said that the meet is an opportunity to building back better on health and climate economic recovery and on international security challenges. External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, will be visiting London to participate in the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting. He will thereafter undertake a bilateral visit to the UK.
Friday, the 30th of April, marked the first 100 days of the Biden-Harris administration. In a statement, acting NASA Chief of Staff Dr. Bhavya Lal said that President Biden and Vice President Harris have expressed strong support for NASA's goals and missions and have laid out a vision that will guide the agency for the years to come. Within the first 100 days of NASA and the Biden-Harris administration, the NASA has made several significant achievements. In today's Hotspot section, we are in conversation with Dr. Bhavya Lal in an exclusive interview covering these recent achievements, India-US collaboration in space, and future avenues of cooperation between nations around the world.
Altimeter data confirms that Ingenuity has performed its first flight of a powered aircraft to another planet.
We can now say that human beings have flown a rotorcraft on another planet.
What you just heard was a jubilant NASA team after the success of the Ingenuity Mars helicopter, which took flight on the Red Planet recently. The year 2021 has been witness to the gloom and distress brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the news of disease and distress from around the world has been punctuated by stellar successes in the field of space from the world's premier space agency, NASA. From the incredible voyage to Mars by the Perseverance rover to the successful test flight of the Ingenuity helicopter, NASA has lifted the spirits of humans around the world with its achievements. Today, we have a very special guest on our show. It is a pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Bhavya Lal, Acting Chief of NASA, to speak with us about NASA's recent achievements, future projects, and possible avenues of cooperation between India, USA, and the rest of the world in the field of space. Thank you, Dr. Lal, for speaking to All India Radio. Firstly, we'd like to congratulate you and your team for your recent successes. Going forward, what other spacefaring achievements can our listeners look forward to from NASA?
I want to thank the listeners of All India Radio for their love of space, for supporting space programs all over the world, for understanding how important space is for the success of humanity. Not just in terms of our long-term future in the universe, but also how space helps improve life on Earth. In terms of things that I'm excited about, launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, which will look into the furthest reaches of time, launch of missions to asteroids, to moons of Jupiter. I mean, sky is the limit. Well, actually, the space is the limit. Infinity is the limit for what we can do, and the benefits are just incalculable. And I really hope that not just India, but countries around the world invest more in our space program. And, space inspires us. We have problems in the near term, and we will always have problems. But, space feeds the soul, and that's important. And I'm thankful for all that, everybody's doing to make sure that we stay inspired.
The success of the Ingenuity helicopter was described by one of the team members as a Wright brothers moment in Mars. Could you elaborate for our listeners the significance of this flight? What were the challenges that had to be overcome to achieve this feat?
Okay, so Ingenuity was called the Wright brothers moment because it was the first controlled flight ever on another planet. And it's a total feat of engineering. What engineers did was they shrank the size and the mass and worked with very specialized materials to demonstrate flight in a thin atmosphere. And again, as some of your listeners may know, Mars's thin atmosphere makes it difficult to achieve enough lift. The atmosphere is 99% less dense than that of Earth. The first challenge was to make an aircraft that is light enough to be lifted. The next challenge was to ensure that it had rotor blades that are much larger, much faster than what would be required for a helicopter of Ingenuity's mass on Earth to generate that lift. The Ingenuity's blades spin about 2,400 revolutions per minute. And just as comparison, helicopters on Earth spin at about 400 revolutions per minute. And as you can imagine, that to spin that fast takes a lot of energy. And again, you need lightweight materials to provide that energy. So the balance was between having a light enough system and having enough energy not only to lift the helicopter off the ground, but also to keep it warm enough to perform in Mars's extremely cold climate. And so it was a technology demonstration. We didn't know if it would succeed, but it did. And not only did we fly that one time on Monday, since then Ingenuity has been flying longer and higher flights. It's a resounding success by any measure.
We are all familiar with Neil Armstrong's most famous statement as he landed on the moon, that it was one small step for man but a giant leap for mankind. Now, NASA's Artemis mission seeks to take another giant leap for all of humanity by carrying the first woman to moon. Can you talk a bit more about this exciting project?
So our goal 50 years ago was to prove that humans could land on the moon and return safely to Earth. As President Kennedy said, This time, our goal is to return to the moon in a sustainable way, to get insight, to bring back lessons that will help propel us into a greater exploration that's never been done before. And of course, the part that is nearest and dearest to my heart is that it would be the first person of color who would be part of the Artemis mission. This was something that was announced by the Biden administration, and of course the first woman and the second woman who would be part of the mission. So I think the Artemis mission represents a diversity of the American public, of the globe, and it just means so much for those of us out there who will be part of the mission, who will be watching the mission. And, we are showing and seeing for ourselves that you could land on the moon. This is what an astronaut looks like. That's extraordinary. And of course, the other really extraordinary part of the Artemis mission that I am excited about is it is preparation for getting to Mars. All the things that we need to be ready to do on Mars, we need to be practicing those on Earth, whether it's producing oxygen, water, hydrogen, using local resources, or using nuclear power because there isn't enough solar energy on the surface of Mars. So we need to be doing a lot of these tests on the surface of the moon. And that's what the Artemis mission would be doing. And I cannot wait to be a part of that.
ISRO and NASA are currently collaborating on the NISAR project. Could you please elaborate a bit more on this project? What are the objectives of the project? What does it seek to achieve?
Absolutely. So it's one of the funnest things I've done since I have been at NASA is to go to the Jet Propulsion Lab where the mission is being assembled. And it's a collaboration between NASA and ISRO. And it's a joint Earth observing mission between our two agencies. And each of us, NASA and ISRO, are providing separate radars that are optimized in their own ways to allow the mission to observe a wide range of changes that either one could do alone. And I was fortunate that when I went to JPL, I not only saw both the Indian and the United States, the SAR, the radars that are being developed and being integrated, I was able to meet many of the scientists who are working on the Indian side. And it was just so heartening for me to see such an extraordinary collaboration. I think it's NASA's largest collaboration internationally. And the mission will improve our understanding of key impacts of climate change, advance our knowledge of natural hazards, and enable many applications for societal benefits. Obviously, NISA is only one example of collaborations. There are discussions underway regarding potential activities in earth science and planetary science, heliophysics, and even human spaceflight. NASA remains committed to working with international partners to accomplish these stunning achievements in science, technology, and exploration. And the Perseverance mission to Mars a few weeks ago was another sort of mission with lots of international partners, and it reinforces these strong bonds. And I hope that we will continue to have these international missions, including with India in the coming months and years.
Now, Dr. Lal, I understand that you have a close association with the state of Uttarakhand. Now, you just spoke about the NISAR mission, which is an Earth observatory mission. How can such projects in space help humans on Earth be better prepared to natural calamities like the recent glacial lake outburst, which caused immense flooding in the state of Uttarakhand? Could you please shine some light on that?
Yeah, I think the Uttarakhand tragedy was just so close to my heart. Again, my parents have a home in that area, and it was tough for me to watch the videos and read the news and talk to my parents. And it just kind of reinforced my desire to make sure that space continues to be a way for us to improve life on Earth. So the Disasters Program area of NASA's Earth Science Applied Science Program uses Earth observation data and applied research to improve the prediction of preparation for, responses to, and recovery from hazards and disasters around the world. So what happens is that before, during, and after disaster strike, our teams coordinate with decision makers and local governments. They provide actionable data to recover from disaster impacts, and they build resilient communities. Not only that, scientists, and again at NASA and around the world, including scientists in India, use a number of databases to measure different facets of the Earth system, from surface temperatures to humidity levels. So there's a system called the NASA Earth Observation System Data and Information System, which provides long-term data records that can help with climate research. All of it together, the Earth Science Division at NASA and India, Japan, Europe, all of these programs fund innovative applied research to help communities anticipate and prepare before disasters strike. These programs provide data products and expertise to stakeholders that enable early action. increase situational awareness during response and aid recovery efforts. So across the board, I think, there's lots of data that NASA and other space agencies collect. I think we need to do more to collaborate to make sure that the data is shareable, there's interoperability and greater trust in each other's systems so we can really leverage on each of our work and make sure that things happen even faster than they currently do. Use of space, there was a tagline a few years ago called Mission to Planet Earth, and that was all about how observing Earth from space can make so many improvements. Obviously disaster relief is an important area, but just long-term for climate change as well. So I'm hoping that we will be able to do more and more of these collaborations going forward.
Dr. Lal, you just alluded to the aspect of bilateral and regional cooperation in the field of space. Space is no longer the sole preserve of the government in recent times. In India as well, we have seen a push towards liberalization of the space sector, and we have brought in several reforms to introduce the private sector into this field. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, pushing humanity farther into the solar system calls for the best of industry, government, and international partners working together. Space is hard, space is expensive, as I just said. And luckily for us, there is growing expertise, not just within government, but in the private sector as well. NASA recognized this expertise very early on, and it transitioned, as an example, the human space flight and cargo transportation to the International Space Station to American private industry. We developed this very creative contracting mechanism so we could fund companies like SpaceX or Northrop Grumman or Boeing to develop rockets and capsules that can take astronauts to the space station. Of course, the one advantage was that in addition to carrying astronauts to space, we are starting to build a strong low Earth orbit economy. It's encouraging competition, it's spurring innovation, and it's driving costs down. It provides a technical and financial boost to the U.S. industry to develop commercial space transportation capabilities. And of course, once we can do better and save money doing low Earth orbit activities, it frees up resources to put the first woman and the first person of color on the moon and ultimately go to Mars. So I think this is a win-win across the board. The private sector has potential for greater revenues. The government has potential to get more out of the money that it has. And as a society, we move forward farther than we would be if it was just one sector or the other focusing on developing technology. So this development, which is underway in the United States and India and Europe, all over the world, is a really good thing. And I'm super excited to see more and more private companies do things in space.
Now, Dr. Lal, growing up, a lot of youngsters harbor aspirations of working in the sector of space, but very rarely do these flights of fantasies ever meet reality. Now, as someone who's managed to achieve that dream, what advice would you offer youngsters who want to chart out a career in space?
That's a great question. And one of the things I like to say is I was lucky, right? I was at the right place at the right time. But how did that happen? And this is something that, this is advice I've gotten over the years that, sure, success is being in the right place at the right time. However, you can ensure that you're at the right place at the right time by being everywhere all the time, right? So, and I guess the nugget there is that work hard. Perseverance is key. There's a book I read a while back called The Last Lecture by this amazing professor from Carnegie Mellon University. And he offers a number of lessons that I think are crucial to success. And one of them is called the Friday night solution. Basically, Pausch got tenure faster than other faculty members. And, his colleagues and friends said, hey, you got tenure early. What was your secret? And he said, it's pretty simple. Call me any Friday night in my office at 10 o'clock and I'll tell you. And so if there's one thing I would like to say is, science is hard, space is hard, so keep your head down and work hard. Know more than anyone else around you and people will notice.
So in essence, Dr. Lal, what you're saying that to make a mark in space, we need two things in life which the two rovers which went to Mars had in abundance: curiosity and perseverance. Thank you, Dr. Lal, so much for taking time out of your packed schedule and speaking to All India Radio. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavan. The honor and privilege was all mine. Bye-bye.
So listeners, that was Dr. Bhavya Lal, Acting Chief of NASA, speaking exclusively to All India Radio.
4 astronauts splashed down safely in the Gulf of Mexico on Sunday, completing NASA's first commercial crew long-duration mission aboard the International Space Station. The return comes nearly 6 months after the crew members arrived at the microgravity laboratory and also marks the longest duration mission of a crewed American spacecraft to date. NASA's SpaceX Crew 1 mission was launched on the 15th of November 2020 on a Falcon 9 rocket from the agency's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The astronauts named the spacecraft Resilience.
Today is the birth centenary of the legendary Indian filmmaker Satyajit Ray. All India Radio remembers the virtuoso filmmaker on the occasion. Ray's contribution led Indian cinema to worldwide acclaim. Acknowledged as among the early auteurs, Ray established a tradition of realist filmmaking in Indian films. Let us listen to an excerpt from Pather Panchali, which won 11 international prizes. Ray had an uncanny knack for bringing the mundane trials and tribulations to life through his cinematography. To achieve this effect, he relied heavily on the element of music to breathe life and vigor into the pictures on screen. 24 days before his death, Ray was presented with an Honorary Academy Award by Audrey Hepburn via video link. In his acceptance speech, he called it the best achievement of his movie-making career.
This year, the Academy Board of Governors has voted to award an honorary Oscar to the great Indian filmmaker Satyajit Ray.
Well, it's been an extraordinary experience for me to be here tonight to receive this magnificent award, certainly the best achievement of my movie-making career.
Moving on to sports in IPL cricket, Jos Buttler helped Rajasthan Royals to a 55-run victory against Sunrisers Hyderabad. In the other IPL match, Punjab Kings set a victory target of 166 runs against Delhi Capitals. Chasing the score, Delhi Capitals were 165 runs for the loss of 3 wickets after 17.4 overs when reports last came in.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Washington Post report writes that the US population grew 7.4% between 2010 and 2020, according to a new census data, which is the country's second slowest pace in the history. Wall Street Journal reports that while China is boasting a dazzling economic recovery, its small businesses are still struggling. The Himalayan Times reports that the Prime Minister Oli is to seek vote of confidence from Parliament. The Sydney Morning Herald writes that a shortage of affordable land in densely populated parts of Sydney is forcing education officials to consider building more vertical schools. And New York Times writes that if done sustainably, online commerce could be less damaging to the environment than traditional in-store shopping. A quick look at the headlines once again. Foreign aid, including medicines, medical equipment and oxygen, continue to arrive to support India's efforts to fight the COVID pandemic. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviews usage of gaseous oxygen to ramp up supply and availability of medical oxygen in the country. Nepal orders closure of 22 border points with India amid a sharp surge in COVID-19 cases. External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, will visit London to participate in the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting. 4 astronauts of NASA's SpaceX Crew 1 mission return safely back to the Earth. Legendary filmmaker Satyajit Ray's birth centenary being celebrated today. And in IPL, Rajasthan Royals beat Sunrisers Hyderabad by 55 runs. And news just in the IPL cricket, Delhi Capitals beat Punjab Kings by 7 wickets at the Arun Jaitley Stadium in New Delhi just a short while ago. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favourite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from South Africa.
Vaishnav Jan do tene kahiye je पीड़ पराई जा उपकार करें तो ये.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.